Tina. Hi. How are you doing?
Wonderful.
All right. All right. I'll call to order the meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee on Thursday, January 16th, 2020 in the Triton High School Library at 6 p.m. This meeting is being audio and video recorded, and I shouldn't say it's at 6 p.m. It's at 6:18 p.m. I apologize. We're starting late because we were lacking a quorum of the committee. I'm going to read aloud the vision statement. We are a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families and the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners. Students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So for those of you who are following along online, the budget webpage is now officially up. So if you go to the tritonschools.org website, you can go to About and then district budget, and then you'll see fiscal year 2021 on the right-hand side, and all of the documents that we'll be reviewing tonight and that we have reviewed in the past 2 nights will be listed there so that you can follow along at home if you'd like. This is the last night of our 3 nights of the individual program budget presentations. We went through the 3 elementary schools on the first night. Last night we went through athletics in the middle school, high school, and then tonight we're going through technology, special education, curriculum and instruction, and the district-wide budget presentation. So this will be the final night. Our next meeting will be the 25th, which is our budget workshop. It's a Saturday morning, happens at 8 a.m., and that's when we'll be taking all the information that came in here, as well as the information that we've got in between, which will include the governor's budget, which will give us both of the initial estimates on what our state funding might look like, as well as the information that we'll need to do some preliminary calculation on town assessments to see how that's going to swing this year. That should be available on the 22nd, and we will also have the transportation contract bids, since this was a bid year for those. Those will be coming on the 23rd, so we'll have all that information to kind of roll in with this and start having a more defined discussion, I guess, among the committee rather than being presentations. So that said, we had our business meeting earlier this month, but, oh, sorry, hang on. Oral communications from the public. I want to get, Bernie? Can you just grab the, yep. I think it's off. I can't see the light.
It's on now. I'm Bernie Cullen from Rowley, and my status is a Rowley taxpayer. So first of all, obviously I've been here for the last 2 nights. This is the 3rd night, and I would say it's the actual level of presentations is actually very good. So not that you need my support for that, but that's my reaction. But I did have a couple of points I wanted to make. So now I had attended the last 2 years of these discussions, so I have a little track record in terms of listening to what's gone on in the past. So this year for the schools, the 5 school buildings, the middle school, high school, and the 3 elementary schools, the projected costs increase are around 700,000 plus or minus. And that's a fairly substantial increase in new costs because that doesn't include any other increases that are projected in terms of salaries, etc. So it's a sufficient number that it requires some hard thinking about how do you justify that $700,000 increase. Whether it's for Salisbury or Rowley or Newbury, it'll translate into a substantial amount of funds. Whether those funds are available or not, I have no idea at this point. And obviously I don't know, I haven't seen any of the numbers, the budget numbers for the district-wide programs. So I don't know what the net is going to be, but at this point it's 700,000 plus. So a couple of things struck me. One is that last year you guys implemented a number of programs which were really either cost reduction or cost avoidance or cost shifting kind of programs. The biggest one, I think, was the bridge program. So when that happens, what I'm interested in, particularly because that model is going to be, there's an investment in a similar model this year, from what I gather,
Hey,
is
Brian,
how effective.
Can I stop you for 2 seconds?
Sure.
I'm just going to let you know that by the public comment, you have up to 3 minutes. You've already used 2 of those. I'll give you an extra minute to kind of wrap up beyond those 3 minutes, but just know that you're running on a timer.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the issue is how effective that cost shifting actually was. What were the benefits of the program? It was a substantial investment. How much costs were actually avoided? How many people were impacted? What's the kind of productivity of that particular program? So that's the first point. And now I'm speaking much faster. This year, there's a move towards the one-to-one program. I think that's a very positive and the right direction to go in. I appreciate that. But that's requiring the additional 2 additional people in the high school to support that program. There are enough resources in the high school to ask whether or not there ought to be some reorganization or reallocation of the existing resources to cover that programmatic shift. I think it's a legitimate programmatic shift, but there are enough resources that there should be movement put from within the existing resources rather than brand new resources. And at that, I'll close my comments.
All right, thank you. You can breathe now. I apologize too. I mean, I did give you an extra minute, so. It's precedent, right? When we start doing 5 minutes or 7 minutes, then it kind of gets out of control, and then somebody else can say, hey, but. Okay. So moving on. Okay, so we're going on to the appointment of the school business administrator. So I think Brian is, okay.
Just making myself notes. So yes, just a quick recap of the process. You remember Michelle submitted her resignation the end of last summer. She was with us through the end of November. I started a process at the beginning of October to replace Michelle with a new school business administrator. Kyle Warren, who is sitting 3 down from me here, is the guy. Just by way of process, so that you remember, from the school committee, Deb Choate as a representative of the finance subcommittee, Kim and Chris Nealand from the district leadership team. We also had Paul Mayette, who is a Newbury parent as well as a member of the Newbury Finance Committee, and then various folks from within our office that were part of the initial screening committee. Full process with the screening committee. We then brought 2 finalists forward that committee said unanimously both will be wonderful, supported both of those folks unanimously to move forward as potential candidates. That was, I think, early December. I'm remembering, was that early December, the first interview? I think very early December. The vetting process, I will say, took a very long time. This is a very important appointment. So the process, we didn't rush. But through lots of follow-up discussions with both Kyle and the other candidate, as well as with references and vetting and reference checking, Kyle emerged as the guy, as the absolute top candidate. So Kyle has his BS in business administration with an accounting concentration. He has an MBA in finance, and he's also a mass certified public accountant. So if you talk to Michelle on her way out the door, her words were, just hire a CPA. If you can find a CPA, oh my gosh, hire a CPA. So those who don't understand what the CPA standard is, talk to Kyle. It is a very, well, you're married to one. So it's a very high standard both on the accounting and the ethics of. So by nature of having his, being a certified public accountant, he's actually an additional step closer for his Massachusetts School Business Administrator licensure. So there's a very condensed process because quite honestly, the CPA standard is much higher than the SBA licensure through the state. So He has worked his entire career at Powers & Sullivan. He was 2 years as an associate auditor and then 4 years as a senior auditor, 2 years as a supervisor, and he's now in his 4th year as an audit manager. As I mentioned, he does not currently hold his license, but he has a very quick path that we've been working on towards that licensure within 300 hours of work, which is about a week and a half on this job. So there's a very clear path there. I know he hasn't signed it yet. He said yes in person. So, as I was going through, I was trying to, how do you describe Kyle? And he's a highly skilled, detailed, and analytical, but also highly personable and approachable. And I'm not going to say anything about CPAs. Dina's laughing. But those are not always synonymous. That doesn't mean they can't be. But, unanimously throughout the process and any of the individuals Kyle interacted with, he comes across as a human, really approachable, really knowledgeable, but also someone that everyone wants to work with. So you certainly have the opportunity to talk to Kyle, ask some questions. I don't know if Kyle wants to say anything, but my recommendation is a contract. This contract did go to the P&N subcommittee last week. They didn't take a vote on it because this is a full committee decision, but it is a standard contract that is offered, that was outlined within the salary range, within the job description. I'm recommending him with a start date of February 3rd, at a starting salary of $122,500, and then that would adjust to $122,700 effective July 1st. This would be a 3-year and 5-month contract. He's agreed to come in at a lower salary while he's completing his licensure, and also allows us to transition from Michelle to Dave Jack, who's there now, and then over to Kyle. But having him on board on February 3rd, as we said throughout this process, is an extreme value to have him be part of any part of the budget process, so that by the time we get to March and on through the spring, he has his feet underneath him as he knows what he's going to take over. That is my recommendation.
All right. So just a reminder to the committee that unlike the superintendent, where we have full, appointing jurisdiction, this is on recommendation of the superintendent, and we have to have a defined reason or something like that. I can't remember what the exact MGL is for declining his recommendation if we so do. I would ask you real quick, can you just give the salary ranges again? Because unless I heard the numbers wrong, I don't think they're what you told me before.
These are the ranges or the salaries?
The
range is 120 to 140.
salaries.
So he would start 122.5 on February 3rd.
Yeah.
And go to 127.5.
127.5,
Yeah.
okay. I think you said 122.7, which is
Very
what
well
got
may.
me confused.
Yes.
All right. Kyle, did you want to say anything to
Yeah, absolutely.
start out? All right.
Thank you very much for having me here tonight. It's an honor to be considered for this position. Going through the interview process, it's become very evident how high caliber of the organization Triton Schools is. The commitment of the staff and administration that I've met so far towards the success of the students, towards the success of the district is very evident. Should I be appointed for this position, I can assure you I'll show that same commitment. I aim to impress, and thank you very much for having me here tonight. Any questions, by all means?
All right, questions from the committee? None. Like this is just
I was
like
going to say,
last
Paul's
night.
like, there's no way Paul doesn't have a
You
question.
got to have something. So I understand your background. You worked as an auditor for the town of Rowley,
Me personally, a number of years ago, not,
but you have a strong memory. So my point is, the town of Rowley is forever questioning our budgetary decisions. So Brian told me that you're going to put together a 200-page report about the town of Rowley's finances and submit that to all of us. Am I correct on that?
you'll have it tomorrow morning.
Before he's employed by the district, you notice that, right?
And that was your question?
There's the perfect introduction to Paul Lees.
Wow. All right, so I guess the one question I had was, clearly you've got the strong financial background, but the other thing that our school business official has done is run the operations side. Can you just talk about kind of your approach to that and how you intend to get up to speed on that operations part of the job position?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd say lots of conversation. Part of my experience that I've enjoyed the most has been communicating with people, sitting down, having conversations about what they're doing, approaching it in a respectful manner. Even though a significant portion of what I do has been on the financials, I've always had to look at what information flows up to those financials and the source people behind that. And so meeting with facilities directors, school lunch, a variety of different, nearly all different departments flow through to the financial aspect of this organization. And I'm flattered by what Brian said about my references, but that's what I enjoy most about the job, is having people feel comfortable talking with me. I think it sets an environment on a go-forward basis where if people are comfortable talking with you, if there's ever an issue, they're more likely to tell you about it right away rather than put it in a desk drawer. So that open communication, building relationships, has been something that I've tried to develop over my career, and hopefully I've become successful at.
All right, good answer. I like that one.
I should say, too, you have candidates who come forward and want to work, right? They applied for the job, they want the job. Then you have candidates who are either putting an amazing show or really, really want to be here. So I think one of the things that throughout the process, the entire committee got the sense, and anyone that Kyle interacted with, that he genuinely wants to be here. We didn't say that he's a Pentucket grad. And just saying, defecting to the Vikings, just, here we go. I had to say it, I'm sorry. Just saying. It's an important piece.
Any other questions? And I should say, too, that that Deb Choate, member of the school committee, also sat on the interviews previously and had spoken quite highly of Kyle. So I know she wasn't able to be here, or she'll be here later today, I should say. But that was kind of a previous exposure on the school committee side. So, barring any further questions, can I get a motion to authorize the superintendent of schools to enter into a contract agreement as the school business administrator with Kyle M. Warren as recommended, with a start date of February 3rd, 2020?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? You can tell we're off our game not having all 9 of us here. All right. Excellent. Thank you, Kyle, and you're welcome to hang around, but if you want to leave too, we fully understand it. Congratulations on your hire.
Appreciate it.
Sign some paperwork afterwards. Excellent.
Good plan. All right.
Thank you all.
So moving on to the fiscal year 21 budget proposals. The first proposal of the night is district-wide curriculum and instruction. I assume that, we've got a dead mic apparently. Thank you. Kim, are you? All right.
First off, I'd like to say thank you to Lori Mowbray and Anna Bates, who is here tonight. They are a very big part of the curriculum and PD team. They come to work every day, very dedicated, and are able to switch gears and play many different roles in the work that they do. So I just want to say thank you to them. Also, thank you to the committee for this process. This is my, 8th year now through this process, and I just feel it gets better and better. It has more details that we're able to provide, and the questions are very thorough. And also for the administrators who are here tonight, their day starts very early and ends very late. So for your presence at this meeting, I think really shows your support for the community, the students, and that you value this process. So thank you. A quick highlight just from this current year, as far as the professional development that we've provided to teachers, staff, and instructional assistants. We had 98 professional development sessions that ran from this summer all the way up to today. Out of these 98 professional development sessions, 82 of them were led by teacher leaders, which I think is really important, because as we're looking at our funding sources, really trying to create sustainability with some of these new programs. So as we adopt new programs, we actually are doing a model called Train the Trainer. And so we have champions that stand out very early on regarding their interest and ability to implement some of these programs with high success. So we try to build those teacher leaders within. We also use our math and reading specialists in many different ways. So their support in providing this PD is also very critical. We were able to contract 16 PD sessions out to provide high-quality PD, and that's not to say the teachers were not high quality, but some of them, we had the project-based learning folks from Buck Institute came out for a week, and they came from California. So it was a remarkable session, and we had, I want to say, 18, 20 teachers who were here for 4 days straight, and so that was exciting. In addition to that, we had 12 instructional assistants who went over beyond those 98 offerings and participated in over 178 hours of extra PD. And that was an initiative that was started with this committee here when they were talking about moving on the pay scale and really trying to increase their education around instruction. So that's been very exciting. And we've also had administrators as well lead some of these sessions. So again, the PD, I think, has been very strong over the last few years. We are trying to create some sustainability with the folks that we have internally, and we're really proud of the work that's been going on. We've had to do a lot of work around PD because we have been fortunate enough through the budget process and the support of the community to update our curriculum. And the two driving forces really around the curriculum updates that put that in the forefront of our needs is that the standards have changed over the course of the years. So keeping current with what our students need, in 2016, as you know, we adopted Math in Focus, K through 8. We, in 2018, adopted Inspire K through 2. We also adopted STEM scopes for grades 3 through 8. In 2019, we creatively implemented a health class called Life Skills. And in 2020, for this particular year, we are in the process of implementing a new civics course, again, which was needed because of the standards changing in grade 8. We also implemented empowering writers, and for the expository writing in K through 8, we had a phonological awareness program that is implemented in pre-K and kindergarten. So we'll talk a little bit further down the line about what, looking ahead in 2020, will be implemented, but we have certainly done an overhaul of our curriculum, which I'm excited to be part of. And some of the structures and supports that we have to support these implementation and the teachers and the students, we have the district professional development committee that comes together probably 3 to 5 times during the course of the year, in addition to the meetings that they hold at their school. So again, schools are given the autonomy to determine which professional development areas they would like to focus on based on the needs of their students and staff. We have a really strong new teacher induction program, and again, a shout out to Anna Bates for the work. She came in and she revamped that, so I'm really proud of that program, and it continues to grow over the course of the year. We are back on track for our curriculum review. This year, our focus is English and Language Arts and the Visual Performing Arts. So that's exciting work, and that will get underway at the end of the month, and we have representation from all the different schools. We have a wellness committee. Each school also has different types of either an implementation team or a sustainability team to help, again, support all these different programs that are up and running. The worst thing that you can do is put all these resources in up front and then let it fizzle out. So we are going strong with all of these programs and maintaining that momentum with that. So we're excited. We continue as a leadership team to do walkthroughs as we look for different practices and instructional pedagogy in place. As you know, we've been working through the technology committee where we have community members, teachers, and administrators part of that team. We were just awarded before Christmas, we got a nice Christmas gift from the state for $75,000 to support middle school after-school programming, and we were able to meet with teachers yesterday, and it's really going to be focused around some type of project-based learning after school, and there were a lot of ideas around STEM engineering, so that's really exciting. That will also continue into the summer, and then the following, it's a 3-year grant, the following year, it's going to be up to $75,000. So we also are looking at supplying a late bus on that on Wednesday, because right now it's Tuesday and Thursday. So that's another exciting thing that's happening. And just the community outreach that we've been able to do and help bring in people from the community to help provide instructional speeches to our students and participate in a way that really gives them a glimpse into the world outside of the walls here and how what you're doing in here can be applied to their careers. So those are some of the exciting things that are happening.
So the late bus on Wednesday, anyone can ride that.
Anybody can ride
Should
that.
make that clear.
Anybody on Wednesday can ride the late bus.
That's not just for those kids.
Not just for those particular kids, yes. So all of that to say, what are the benefits of that? Well, obviously, I think students are more engaged, but in a more kind of data-driven view, we continue to make gains in science 3 through 8. Overall percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations has increased from 44% to 58%. And we have seen 3 years of increased growth in those percentiles, and we scored above the state level in science. So again, trying to keep that momentum moving. We continue to make gains in math as well. Overall percent of students has increased, meeting or exceeding expectation. We were actually below the state, so there was a gap between how the Triton students were performing at the state level. So we have gone up from 2017 to 2019. In 2017, we were 41% meeting or exceeding expectations, and in 2019, we were 48%. So again, we're seeing a 3 data point trend where it's going up. We do continue to make gains in ELA. Again, 2017, we were at 44%, and 2019, we're almost at 54% in ELA. So in all the different content areas, we're seeing growth, and we want to sustain this growth, and continue to strengthen it. We also know that Newbury was identified as a school of recognition by the state. The high school is only in year 1 of the next generation standards, next generation MCAS testing, but already we've seen them making some strong gains, and I only see that going up, especially with all the work that Patrick has laid out for us, and some great things going on there. So all of that just to say that we appreciate the support that we get from the committee and the local towns, and that we really try to be very strategic in the way that we use these funds, and also to create some structures that are sustainable, that we can continue to grow from this particular model. Any questions about anything that I just mentioned with the kind of overview of it? So with the budget for next year, if you look on page 2, I outlined pretty much all of the new curriculum updates, the proposed curriculum adoption for next year that is underway with curriculum adoption committee meetings is really 6th, 7th, and 9th grade. Because of the standards that have been changing, we need to align our curriculum with current resources. We have also used empowering writers for this year. There is another part to empowering writers where it just focuses on the narrative. So in K1, the narrative and the expository writing is bundled into one package, so they already had training in that. Where it gets more complicated and complex, 3 through 8, they actually separate those two writing genres out. So this year, they focused on expository, and then next year, they will focus on narrative writing. That does not mean that the teachers have not been doing narrative writing in their classes. They absolutely have. This just pulls everybody together on the same page as far as technique and cueing and visual organizers, that type of stuff. So that's kind of a new budget item that's been put into the curriculum budget. If you look to page 4 out of page 8, the other area that is increased is just $1,000 for translation service for our English learners. We're at about 25 now as far as how many English learners that we have. That number has gone up slightly over the course of a few years. But what we're really seeing as far as the difference with the population of English learners is that we're getting a lot of newcomers. So a newcomer is somebody who does not speak any English whatsoever. And so their needs are very different from somebody who either has transferred in from another school district that has already been part of an EL program, or may have been born in this particular country but has never attended a English-speaking school. So again, the needs are a little bit different, and we really want to make sure that all of our services and their experience here is equitable. So we want to provide any family with translation services, whether it's to translate written documents or to have them come in during teacher conferences. We have tried Google Translator, and sometimes it's yay, and sometimes we have an older sibling that says, no, you asked if they had a nice vacuum cleaner, and we're like, that's not what we were asking. So it's hit or miss, so we feel much more confident if we had professionals come in and we're able to document, to translate report cards and other such important documents, and we are keeping them on file so that if we do have another child who comes in with that same home language, we have access to that already. So we're building kind of a file of all the different languages that we have. And the other is just supplies. So some of the ELs, the English learners who come in at the high school level, we really don't have a curriculum for them to help them transition into the English language. Our EL teacher there has done a marvelous job kind of pulling different resources together. And now that we see that it really is becoming a trend, and we want to make sure that we have really high quality English language learner curriculum for them, and it goes in a scope and sequence, and so that's in there as well. That's $1,000. And other than the $28,256 for the new history and science for grades 6th, 7th, and 9th, that is it as far as new items in my budget. I also just want to mention briefly that the majority of the curriculum that we're moving to is using an online platform. When we go through the process and adopt a new curriculum that uses an online platform, we make sure that there are enough Chromebooks for the students and that they do not have to share. So that is one of the things that we look at when we're looking at new curriculum. Because most of these curriculums offer a subscription price, sometimes that pricing is divided up into 2-year payments, and you get it for 6 years. Sometimes it's divided up into 3 years, and you have to pay a third each year. And sometimes it's a yearly cost until you don't want to use it anymore. So it's been a little bit of a, I don't want to say whack-a-mole, but a whack-a-mole, like, okay, this one's up, this one's not up. And so very similar to the leases of the Chromes, are all on different cycles. So as we watch this change each year, sometimes we will have additional funding, but that additional funding automatically rolls into, like for this one, the $35,000 is the difference between the extra that, I don't want to say extra, but we paid off a subscription, and so that excess is then put into the newer platform, the newer subscription of whatever the teachers decide to go with at that particular level. So we just, like I said, keep an eye on that, but I'm really confident about the process for the new social studies curriculum, and when they make that final decision, we will have them here presenting to you about what their final decision is. So, any questions about the budget or what I just reviewed?
Dina?
Kim, I noticed that on page 4, you have the roughly $28,000 increase for the history and social sciences, but on page 6,
Yep.
it says 59.5.
So that is the full subscription cost, and they said we could break it up into 2 years.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So if that's the case, and that's a ballpark figure. We don't know what they're going to choose, but that was one of the pricing that was pretty high, they were in high favor of.
Other questions from the committee? Maureen?
Kim, I was just wondering, the 25 students that you spoke about, the English learners, are they pretty much spread out across the schools, or is there a higher concentration?
So, yep, I actually wrote that down. So 10 at the high school,
Okay.
and then 10 at SES. So, and then 3 at PGS and 2 at NES.
Okay.
Yep. And we've actually already had, once they reach a certain level of proficiency, we release them. And so we've already had 15 students released from our EL program and are doing well in the mainstream population. And we have to follow them. We would follow them anyway for 4 years after they're released, because sometimes if they're released too soon without support, they potentially could have a slide. So we've been really successful, which speaks to the skill level of our EL teachers and the teachers that they work with, so that when they are released, we have not had to pull anybody back into the program. So that's good.
So with the high school age students, do you find that they require more
Yes, absolutely.
interventions?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, because they also have to meet the graduation requirements, and so
Right.
it's really content heavy. And if you think about when you're educating somebody at the elementary level, you're teaching them how to read. Part of their experience there is teaching them how to read. When they get to the high school, they're expected already to be able to read, and that's really the kind of the primary focus, is that content. So it's really a balancing act about getting enough credits and exposing them to content. We use a lot of devices and translation to support their learning, but yeah, it's definitely a different need, more intense too, and it's much harder to get them to a high level of English proficiency in that short amount of window.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Paul? Oh, no? Yeah.
So Kim,
Yes.
on this $28,000 for the instructional techs, why does it end up in your ledger and not the middle school and the high
That's
school?
a great question. So because we have, a couple different reasons. One is we have, if they become a license, it gets very challenging to move them back and forth. And just like with the Chromebooks, we're trying to figure out the best system to show it. Do we show it? And we had the conversation. Should we put it in their budget? Should we put it in our budget? This newer curriculum, because it's a newer curriculum adoption, we said we would put it in this budget because we're not quite sure what it is. We're not quite sure exactly where the money will land, but eventually we're really gonna need to sit down and decide, is it easier for me to keep track of all the licenses? I think it is, because they're all, and there's no way you can put them on the same track. As opposed to the principals trying to manage that. We have moved the consumables to them because we know that that's a constant. And really, they're the ones who are doing inventory. And that's the other thing. We don't just check a box and order stuff at the end of every year. We go through each and every item on the list to make sure that if you have it and you haven't used all of the bags of sand, you don't need 5. You know what I mean? So again, really trying to be thoughtful in what we order so that we're responsible spending people's money. And we do take a lot of pride in that. So that's why it's in here, and I think we're going to be kind of running into the same issue even with the Chromebooks, because the leases are spread out all over. That's a little bit easier to get on the same page because you're dealing with one vendor, hopefully. This is a little bit more tricky. So until we figure out the best way, it's best kind of kept under our umbrella. That makes sense. But we're happy
It does,
to
and
do it.
it's helpful, but I just have a short follow-up. So this $28,000 in these texts or software, whatever it is this for the teachers to assist in instruction, or is this for the students?
No, this is for the students. So, I mean, the biology book that they're using this year, it's not even a book. So they showed, their biology book was so outdated. I think you know how dated, right?
Remember
Okay.
it from last
They
year.
loved it, the book. So they went to the publisher, and we had maybe 3 or 4 different publishers that presented different textbooks, and they ended up going with a current model of the book that they had previously enjoyed. The textbook really doesn't exist. I mean, they could buy it, but they loved the online textbook. So really what they're using is an online platform. That is their textbook. Now, the other just clarification I wanted to say is that in addition to that, they ordered maybe 12 or 13, I don't know, probably 12, 13 extra instructional books that were textbooks. So for kids who, for whatever reason, don't like to interact and read something on the screen, they had books available for them as well. So we really do take into consideration that reading on the screen is not for everybody, right? There are some kids that really need to interact with that book. And also the fact that we wanted to make sure that teachers didn't have to sign out to be able to access a textbook, right? So that was another concern. And we also made sure that they were giving a full day of training. And I'll say this because I'm older than them, but the majority of them were young and had no problem getting on and working through some of the trials with it. And Anna was a big, she's laughing because she knows, Anna was a big support in that as well. And so, and that truly speaks to what Patrick was talking about, the integration specialist, is that, we check in, but not at the level that we would really want to be able to check in. Even with iReady, we're getting excited because they're starting to look at all the capacity of what those platforms can do. But we really need somebody in on a regular basis that totally focuses on that. And the other thing I wanted to mention about technology, and I think you were talking a little bit about last night, is that digital literacy and the computer science component at our schools. And I had just mentioned this to Brian to say, those are standards that need to be addressed, and we need to have some type of coherent vertical alignment that starts at the elementary level. And when we cut back on our media specialists, well, with 2 things. One is they're now trying to juggle the demands of running a library, which we all value at that level, and also kind of the digital literacy standards, which really are the technical pieces, the keyboarding and that type of stuff. But there's a whole nother component that at the elementary level about computer science that we just don't have the capacity right now to get exposed. I do think there are some ways around that we can start to be creative and use those resources, maybe readjust them a little bit. But again, that's probably something I would say that's down the road that we need to look at too. So.
I have just one more follow-up. So there was a question earlier tonight about shifting the existing resources to cover the technology specialist position that's been proposed. It's not quite that simple, is it?
I'm sorry, so it's shifting the
existing resources at the high
Yes,
school.
for the technology support
Specialist,
person?
right? No, I mean, it's a specialized degree, specialized training.
Oh, yeah, no, it's
Right?
not that
I mean,
easy.
so we can't
No.
just reach out to somebody that doesn't have a full-time schedule to take that position.
Absolutely not, no. Nope. It really requires a high level of understanding of the actual tools, the instructional aspects, but also being able to relate to people, because this device, not me, can make people very anxious. We have a very wide range of teaching staff, and if we want them to be comfortable with it, they have to be comfortable saying what they don't know and don't understand. So we have to be sensitive to that, but it's definitely a special person. And, when you look at all the other schools around here, we're like the only one that doesn't have an integration specialist. So that's definitely a need, because they could also help train people with the computer science, that piece of it as well. Yep.
Further questions from the committee? All right, I have a couple. No surprise, right? Can you talk a little bit about PD next year? Because you haven't really
Yep.
touched on that.
Yeah, no, I can tell you that because we'll have empowering writers for narrative, that will be definitely for next year. We'll also obviously have PD for the social studies curriculum. But other than that, it's really, we're right now in the process, it's not something that we decide upon, it's really a group effort. And so our district PD committee will meet in February, and that's where we'll start to unpack that and see what their needs are. And so they've been working and meeting with their staff, which is great. So at one time, it was, what was the district wanting? What did the schools want? And now we really do it in a collaborative process because we can also share resources. So by February, I'll give you a sense, but, I mean, I'm not sure.
It's fair enough, fair enough. As far as past curriculum, I know we had purchased Math and Focus, and that's been paid off. STEM Scopes and Inspire, was that
So
a-
Inspire is paid off.
Okay.
STEM Scopes is a yearly subscription cost, and if I'm saying something that's not accurate, you just jump right in there, Anna. That is a yearly subscription cost, so every year we pay the same price. As far as, I knew you were going to ask this, so I was writing this down. STEM Scopes, McGraw-Hill Civics, we're in our second and final payment, it's $7,250. That will keep us in that particular platform for 6 years. It's a 6-year subscription.
Okay.
Empowering writers, like I think I mentioned it the other night, we bought manuals, again, to reduce the cost, because we couldn't pay a certain amount every single year and justify it when we know that there's not a lot of updates. So that is something that we take into consideration. Something like science, it's constantly changing. Social studies, constantly changing. How to write, not so much. So to have an online subscription, yes, there's a need for it, and we're glad that we can get an online subscription for special educators who shift their different grade levels that they support, but that is a one and done. Phonological awareness is a book, so that will not need to be updated. And then I would say the history and social science one for 9th grade, 6th, and 7th will most likely be a subscription. I think you said it was, what, 3 years subscription?
6 years.
6-year subscription, but 2-year payment?
With one,
See, this is where it gets complicated.
one of the options is.
Anna, can you just do me a favor and grab a mic, please? Either the one up there, or you can come sit up here, just so that, because the video
Come sit
doesn't
up
pick it
here.
up.
Just hit the button.
Thank you.
So grades 6 and 7 have come down to one program, which in the past has given us the ability to split a 6-year subscription cost over 2 years. They are trying that out right now, and my feeling is that's going to be their final recommendation. Grade 9, at the end of the month, is going to be hearing publisher presentations from 2 different publishers. One of them allows us to split, the other one will never do that. So I don't know where that's going to land. It's either going to be one big lump payment for 6 years or splitting it over 2.
And that's a 6-year as well?
Yeah,
They're
both 6 years. We do have the option to do a 4-year or do a 2-year. They just tend to become much more expensive as you reduce the length of the subscription.
Oh, that makes sense.
So can I just go back to the question that Dina asked? Because you asked about the 28,256, that was the increase in the line, and you were equating that with the half payment. That's actually, so the cost of history and social science resource is 59,500. That's what's included in the budget. What came out is some of these other, I think it was some science costs that were in the budget last year. So the net increase in that line overall is 28,000, nothing having to do with the half of that payment. It's paying the history and social science in full, but the net increase, the fact that it's about half of that is immaterial. The reality is that's because there are other costs, I don't know which ones, science and others, that came off the table because those subscriptions were paid off.
So that's not a 2-year,
No, that's paying it in full in one.
okay. Thank you for the clarification.
I was just listening to both those questions together.
Sorry, I'm trying to put that together now. Okay. But from what you just said, it looks like 2 different systems, so to speak, 2 different programs?
Yes,
would be
that we
split.
don't know yet.
Right, okay.
Yes.
So, and do we know when we'll know approximately? I'm wondering if it's going to happen during a budget season, or if this is going to be a ballpark placeholder until.
So the grade 6 and 7 group, I can't remember if it's the beginning of March, I think we're coming back together. We wanted to give them a little bit of time to try out the materials in the class and get some feedback from the students as well. Ninth grade, since I believe we're meeting on the 31st of January. So they may come out of that and have a strong preference for one, I'm not sure. When would you like them to have a decision?
Well, our tentative budget is mid-February and our final budget is mid-March. So, the February one is a high water mark. We can't go high, well, we could go higher, but traditionally don't, right? That's what it's supposed to be. So, we can still go lower than that going into the March final budget, which I think the vote is the 13th. Do I have that right, Brian? 11th. Okay. February 13th. No, February.
February 12th and
February
March
12th,
11th.
March 11th, okay.
It's a leap year.
Oh, that's right, leap year. Yes.
So we may.
Okay.
We may.
I'm just curious, because it's nice to pin those down
Yeah,
if we know
yeah.
exactly what it is. Okay. That was the last of my questions. Anything else from the committee? No? All right, seeing none, thank you both for your time and for all the work that went into this. And it looks like district-wide special education.
Right.
Mr. McGee?
All right, thank you. I'm going to go right through the workbook and work you through the proposed FY21 budget. I always like to remind everybody, and the school committee has been very understanding of this, but we are trying to project a budget 17 to 18 months out from now. So the budget that I'm proposing tonight looks at costs that we know, but there is some money's built in for possibilities. So this, I would say, is the high water mark, hopefully, at this point. And then during the next few months, we'll work through the numbers. And hopefully, they get better. First of all, I'd like to thank Sandy Susi, as always, for all her efforts. And she clearly goes above and beyond her job description throughout the district and really keeps special ed functioning at a high level, whether it's doing tech support, helping people in a pinch, or even we had a staff member who was out for an extended period of time this school year, and she chipped in and just did whatever it took to keep the department functioning. So I'd like to thank her. So in terms of successes from last year, I know we talked about it with some of the principals over the past couple of days, but I do want to sort of reinforce the impact that the BCBAs have had for the school district. So I think we talked about we have one full-time BCBA at NES, and that's really because of the intensive programs that we have with children with autism that really require a good number of hours every week to ensure appropriate programming, and then a district-wide BCBA that we talked about that works with the other schools. So that support has been invaluable, and all the principals have been very pleased with the people we have hired. I'd like to say it was skill, but it might be luck. Beth and I interviewed some people over the summer, and we just happened to really, I think we hit the jackpot just on the staff members we have in terms of their skill level and their ability to fit into the district. And the other thing I think we also did is we didn't want to spread them too thin. So some districts may hire a BCBA and have them provide services for 5 schools with one person. So they're just running around putting out fires. With the staff that we have now, they've been able to provide staff training, support, and crisis management. So, and also if a student has had particular difficulty, we can redirect somebody to a school to spend more time to have that student, work on programming, which also prevents the need for a more restrictive placement. So that's been valuable. So as far as the gentleman had mentioned the Bright program, I just wanted to comment a little bit on that. So it's not, as you know, it's not a special education program per se, but special education students are eligible to utilize it if they can. So there have been a lot of students this year that have accessed the program, and I would say, I think Patrick said last night that at least 2 or 3 of them could have gone out of district, which basically 2 or 3 students could pay for the whole program. So I think that's been a success, and the guidance department and Megan over have done a tremendous job of really trying to make a criteria for students that enter the program, and also there seems to be a high success rate of the students that are then, with that intervention, returning to the general classrooms, which is what we wanted. So I think that's been a success. Definitely a big investment, but very proactive, and I think if you really look at the numbers, besides the ethical decisions to keep kids in their home community, it certainly financially makes sense. And I think you've heard from all the presentations that social emotional issues, mental health issues continue to just be a theme that we're all seeing. So that everything we can do to increase programming and support is going to assist us. So I'm going to go to first page 1. So this is it's very similar to last year, that our role as a district is to provide a continuum of programs from ages 3 to 22. I think we do a really nice job at that, and I think the people who have been on the committee for 7 or 8 years will think back of all the resources we've added back into the district in terms of the high school program, the social workers, the ASD programs. So I think that continues to give us a lot of flexibility, but also when we have a parent or an advocate or an attorney who may want a different placement, when we can say we have a placement and it's a high-quality program, and it also allows the student to stay in district, that is, again, not only ethically and educationally beneficial to kids, but it also puts us in a good position. And then the other thing I forgot is the addition of the third ASD program, which has been invaluable because we've already seen an increase of 3 to 4 students already from last year. So if we did not have that third program in place, I think we would have been in trouble in terms of trying to find room for those students. So that was very proactive. And I think the other thing, I think the BCBAs have also allowed the principals to return to their work as principals. I think you remember last year there was a lot of crisis management and teachers getting pulled and staff getting pulled. So now when you have somebody available to do that, that benefits the whole school, because then principals and teachers can focus on the instruction with the students and not having to respond to emergencies. Not that they don't do that too, but it certainly helped. So the current trends, I think the first 3 we have seen over the past few years. Number 4, the children with complex physical and developmental disabilities. There's definitely seems to be an uptick in kids coming from early intervention that have more complex needs. So that's something I think we'll need to keep an eye on in the future. There are a lot of kids are in the early grades, preschool, but eventually that might take some more programming, but it also adds in terms of expenses for adaptive equipment and nursing and therapy, so that's something that I'm just seeing when we usually meet with EI once or twice a year, and they give us sort of an update on what's happening, so that for whatever reason, that seems to be an uptick in the population that we're seeing. The other thing with the children with specific learning disabilities, I think we have a variety of services and teachers, reading specialists that can assist students, but we're starting to see some students that are not responding as well as we'd like, and so we may need to, and again, this is I'm trying to just look at current trends to look out to the future, that may need a more intensive programming, meaning not getting reading instruction maybe 3 or 4 times a week, but maybe needing a half-day program and then some inclusion. So that's just sort of being proactive and looking forward. Let's see. All right. On page 2, we always break down the number of the kids with disabilities and the categories that we have. So these are the categories that are dictated by the state. So we are at about 17% of all registered students, which is exactly right around what the state average is, between a percentage point or so, 17%. But we do continue to see a number of kids with intensive needs. Even if you look at just autism, 60 children with autism is a trend that's really high, but it also is consistent with what's happening across Massachusetts and the country. So that just, obviously those students take more resources and programming. And also the students with learning disabilities, they make up about 25% of our population. And we have been able to program for them, I think, well, but that might, in the future, we may have to sort of look at additional resources. And also because Massachusetts is putting in some new legislation regarding early identification of kids with dyslexia. It's going to be proactive, and it's going to help kids, and of course, teachers identify kids earlier and provide services earlier. So that's a trend that we're also seeing. Let's see, so if you go to page 3. So one of the things that we've been talking about as a leadership team is, and I've thought about, we've steadily increased the amount of programs and services for kids with disabilities in terms of specialized programs, resources, adjustment counselors, et cetera. But we haven't really changed the structure or the infrastructure of the special ed, I guess, department, if you will, for a long time. So we've had, and I think we've talked about this over the years ago, there was an assistant director, there was more ETCs, there was more clerical staff to help with the issues I've sort of presented below. Supporting the students, making sure IEPs are written consistently, out in a timely fashion, et cetera. So as a leadership team, and again, this would be the ideal situation, would be to add an additional ETC to help with the middle and high school, and then an additional 0.5 at each elementary school, which would essentially make every elementary school would have a full-time ETC, and then we would hire a 0.5 special education teacher to help with their responsibilities. Because right now we have a full-time position at the middle and high school, and then at the elementary school, there's a half-time ETC and a half-time teacher. So that's quite, if you look at the number of meetings that are held every year, the amount of paperwork, coordinating meetings, and then having to teach a caseload, which the caseload is smaller than it would be for a typical special ed teacher, but it's really a strain on the building, and this would also improve support for the principals in the school building. So that's something as a leadership team we felt was something that would be the ideal situation. Moving forward. So in terms of, on page 4, you see the sort of specific line items that compared to last year to this year. And it's also important to note that I think what we're comparing is before Michelle left, she updated the budget based on what is happening currently, because I think if you recall last year, at this point last year, we were recommending, or we had to ask for a $500,000 increase in out-of-district tuitions, and then we had several move-ins and residential, so we were really behind the 8 ball. So I think these numbers compare sort of what, before Michelle left in December, sort of what she redid the budget. So that's what these comparisons are based on. So I think I'm going to turn to the, on page 8 and just go through each line item. So special ed contracted services, so you can see that it's pretty detailed in terms of these are services that we cannot provide through the teachers or staff that we have now. They're typically specialized services that have either a specific certification or skill set that are not, that the teachers, or not that it's not in the realm of the expertise because it's so specialized. And so sometimes there's a number of children, who might need, you see like vision and mobility or vision therapy. So that's a very specific skill set, and most schools we have to use contracted services to have people part of those teams. And then I think at the bottom, the speech services, we've had to contract with an outside company to help with to supplement some of the services at SES in the middle and high school. It doesn't really warrant a full-time position, but we have to use that to implement IEPs. And the nursing services are for students that have intensive needs that might need some nursing services, but they're not full-time at this point. So let's see. So the home tutoring line item. So I think you will remember that several years ago, we started using some online tutoring, which is FUEL-ED, and I've met with the high school staff and particularly talked to Megan Ober and Patrick, and I think we may want to change the vendor, which will reduce that amount, just because it's a better product and it's less money. So these are for kids who are either physically unable to attend school, or some kids if they're hospitalized, we're obligated to pay for services while they're in the hospital, or for some home tutoring. But I will say, the one thing I wanted to mention too, that we've had over the past, since implementing this, we've really been able to help many kids graduate and not drop out, because we've been able to be flexible. And of course, our goal is to have every student come to school like every other, and enjoy the full day extracurricular. But some students, and that's the way the trend is going for across the state, they're just unable to do that. So rather than having an all or nothing approach, we've been able to have some students can come in for a half day, but they can take some online courses and then work with the guidance department to get those kids the credits that they need. So we've had some really nice success stories of kids who otherwise would have dropped out and have overcome really a lot of personal challenges, but because of this flexibility. So it was, and I have to thank the high school administration staff for always being very flexible, in the administration for offering those alternatives, because I think we're finding there's different ways to get to the finish line. The old graduation is really, in years ago, you either graduated or you didn't, and there was no in between, but this is just a trend that everyone's seeing. Summer program remains fairly consistent. There is a slight increase, but that's directly related to the need to add a teacher for the autism program, because we now have 3 programs. We need to add a staff member. Special ed supplies and materials. That is, so this is really, the school districts have a small line item for materials, but these are for specialized materials that the children need. So if there's a hearing impaired student that needs an FM system, or a student with autism that needs an iPad to communicate, medical supplies, adaptive equipment, and then I'll talk about transportation, but we did put in gas for the 2 leased vans that we have, that we share with the high school. Let's see. So transportation, this is also a high water mark. I think what happens is, so every van that we have in district or out is approximately $45,000. So we try to obviously work with the transportation company to put as many kids on the van that makes sense, that's safe, and that can get the kids to school on time. And sometimes that changes. So we have some kids that have a single run that would cost the same money as if we had 4 kids on the van. So it fluctuates, and NRT does a nice job with that, trying to help, try to look what's best for the kids, but also what's budget-wise. And then in terms of the vocational transportation, so this year, before Michelle left, I think we talked about it a little bit last night, but we had a system where athletics put the whole amount of the lease in their line item, and then they were billing special ed back per trip. So I talked to Tim and Dave, Jack, and Brian, and I think what makes most sense is just splitting up the cost of what the actual leases are. So you'll likely see we use it approximately 60% of the time. So that line item would actually be reduced to $16,500, and then the high school would then be reduced to 11,000. So that was a duplicate, because it literally just changed last week when before the budget, we got together, decided to do that. Out-of-district placements, you'll see there's a reduction right now. So what I'd like to say is these are all the students that we know, and there are some placeholders in there for students that we're not quite sure of at this point. We do have, fortunately, we have a number of students that are graduating or aging out. So rather than minus 32,000, it could be a much larger number if those students had not graduated. And we've been able to bring a student back. And then I think actually this year, knock on wood, we have 2 kids in 45-day placements, but we haven't sent anybody out of district this year. And I think it's also directly related to the increased support with the BCBAs and the programming that we haven't been able to do that. So that number could likely change over the next 3 months. I think. And then I think on page 11, Dina, I know you had asked about the breakdown of the programs. So there's just a breakdown of where our students are currently going to their programs. So you can see currently now we have 3 residential students, which is a very significant cost. I mean, typically years past, we may have had 1, and this was a situation where it was beyond our control. It was either a placement through DCF or just other factors that we really didn't have a decision on. And then the one thing I wanted to mention is, so if you look on page 12 with the breakdown of our projected the costs, our circuit breaker revenue went up. The school choice went down a bit because we had some kids choice out that were high-cost special ed students. We have the tuition offset, and the $700,000 is from the grant that we have. So it's not really new money, but before Michelle left, she recommended that this $700,000 was used for instructional assistance last year. So rather than use it for that, it was just cleaner to just use it for all out of districts. So that's not really new revenue. It's just a matter of we're offsetting out of district tuition as opposed to paying staff members for it. So that's it, I guess. I'm sure there are questions.
I'm sure there are. I was saying earlier today, you're always one of the most popular presentations.
I'm sure I am.
All right.
Although I feel better than last year.
I'm sure you do. Questions, Maureen?
David, could you just give a quick explanation of the nursing services, the $25,000 in nursing services? Is that students that are in school during the day, or is that students that are placed out?
No, it's for students in school during the day.
So they're here receiving additional nursing services?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So these are students that absolutely medically cannot be safe in school without a one-on-one nurse.
Okay.
So again, this is one of the newer themes, because we did have several students that when the kids aged out last year, we haven't had a lot of kids for a very long time. So yeah, that's directly related to providing services for them in school to attend. So the nurse also serves as a nurse, but also as an assistant in daily care. So these are children that need constant care, supervision in sort of life-threatening situations.
All right. And approximately how many students would you say?
Well, that's representing 1 right now.
That's one, so that's one student?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
So can I just get a clarification on that real quick before, just while we're on it? I know we see sometimes that there's a nurse on transportation to an out-of-district
Yep.
placement. Where is that nursing cost? Is that part of the,
Yeah.
included in transportation
It's
costs?
built in the
this line?
transport, yeah.
Okay.
So if you look at the bills,
There are
the
more.
transportation company will add what it costs to.
Yeah.
And then whatever the fee is for the nurse to, to get the student to and from school safely.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured. You have more?
No.
Was that, all right, next, Dina?
Thank you.
Dave, thank you first for including the information on where our students are in these collaboratives. That is the information that I was looking for. I have a question about the additional ETCs. You said that that was kind of on the wish list. So tell me how important that is to you. You know, I think that we've heard from the middle school and the high school that the BCBAs are very important, and I liked your comment, or I appreciate your comment about, you know, with the BCBAs in the schools, that now is freeing up the principals, because I do recall in past years, the principals were putting out fires, so to speak, and they certainly have other things to be doing as well. So can you elaborate a little bit more on
Sure.
how big of a priority is that?
And I want to thank Sandy because she anticipated this question and gave me a little cheat sheet to go along with it. So, thank you, Sandy. So I think it's all going to come down to sort of going through this process, making what's a priority. I think for sure we need to change our structure and add additional support. You know, are there other ways to do this to improve it? Yes, I think. So I think it's really going to come down to depend on what the other priorities are, because I think it's clearly right now, and this was, you know, with the leadership team agreeing that it is very important. But again, if you had to compare the two, which would I rather have? I mean, can we function the way it is? Yeah, yes, we can. But it also, I think you have to be careful, because then you put yourself at risk for possible litigation, IEPs not getting out in time. We've done a lot of work with Alan Bloom on writing IEPs,
Exactly.
reviewing IEPs. So this is the ideal, but there are certainly, I think, other models that we could explore.
But as I recall, you've mentioned this in the past as well, so this is not something that has come up new this year, correct?
Correct, yeah. I think, you know, and people, I think we just get used to doing what we do.
Right.
And,
Right.
but it clearly is, it clearly does have an impact, especially with the number of meetings that a chairperson needs to run, and then also trying to service children is challenging, because you don't know, you could schedule a meeting for an hour, and then it could be 2 hours or 2.5, and then the chairperson ends up having a running to a to service kids. So there's definitely, it would add to the structure. So I think, and it was clear in Alan Bloom's report that we need to really look at our structure carefully, and again, and look at, or even over time, what can we do to make an immediate impact? You know, one of the things he mentioned was transitions that were, from like 6 to 7, especially, and then from 8 to 9. So there's a way to like have a chairperson that would start covering kids in 6th grade and transition them through the middle school. So there are different options, but I think it's really going to come down to, as a group, as a leadership team, the committee, what are the priorities?
So not to belabor the point, but of those two that are listed here, would you rather have them, the ETC at the middle and high school, or what would your first step be, I guess is what I'm asking?
So I'm going to jump in, because
You're making me choose? I can.
So this is Dave, defending kind of his own department, but the reality is this is, as he mentioned, this is coming out of Alan Bloom's report. And so if you go back to the days when Chris Nealon, now as a principal, was the Director of People Services, right? Was that your title at that point? There was also an out-of-district coordinator. There was a clerical person in the office. So there were 3 people in central office. Then in each school, there was a full-time ETC. There was a full-time clerical person in each school. So today, is there anything else? Did I get everyone?
Those were the days.
Those were the days, yeah. And I mean, numbers-wise, we probably have similar numbers for IEPs, all things considered, even though our population has shrunk as a whole. So today, we have a half-time ETC, no clerical support at any of the schools. We have 1 central office administrator, and we have Sandy as the one person that every IEP goes out through. So part of this discussion has been, how do we add clerical support? Is it about getting the documents out the door? Or is it about cultural change in improving our special education programming. So in all the work that we've done to date and continuing to do, it's about how do we provide a better product, right? It's the experience, it's the instruction, it's how do we educate kids better tomorrow than we did today. So this proposal, where we landed was, if the ETC was full-time in every building, sure, they're certainly involved in the process of developing the IEPs, but it also gives the principals a full-time resource there in the building to be their special education expert, right? The 5 principals sitting there, it's one of the 18 things that they're supposed to pay attention to on just one day. So if we want to say that special education is a priority, we have to have the resources to be able to pay attention to it. I mean, you could point fingers, did anything go wrong? We don't know, right? This isn't about what we've done wrong in the past. It's about, it has implications for kids going out of district. It has implications for the programming we have in district. And it's about providing a support and structure that allows this, take the names away from it, the special education administrator, to look at the district as a whole and have resources across the district working with principals to make sure the programming is happening as it should be. So it's, my answer to that would be, it's an all or nothing to some degree, because it's about putting the structure into place. Of course, if you force my hand, we have to answer that. But I think ultimately it's about putting that structure into place, and in doing that, it's a package deal, if you will. I don't know if anyone wants to. As you know, I'm very happy to have people disagree with me. Come on. Nothing. All right, so they agree so far.
Okay.
Anything else, Dina?
Not right now, thanks.
Okay. Folks down this end of the table? Tina? Paul?
Yeah, no, I have a question. So, David, thank you for doing so much with so little. I mean, Brian went through the history of it, but I do have to ask you questions about your numbers. So looking at the out-of-district placements for the last 4 years, they go 36, 38, 36, 40. We're at 38, I think, projected for next year, but yet your fuel costs are going up 10%, from 1.1 million to 1.25 million. How does that happen?
Say it again, the what cost?
Out-of-district transportation costs are going up $155,000.
Yeah,
With the same number of students, roughly, what
Right.
I'm asking is, what's the gist, what's going on with that?
So it could be as simple as I indicated, a student is recommended to go to a school that only one student goes to. So rather than being able to put four or five kids on a van, we have to put one student on a van going to one school, and it's the same amount of money. So with the transportation, we do well with a lot of the kids. Like, say, for the North Shore Consortium, we might have 5 kids going to one school, or like 4 kids. So that's one van. So it's the same amount of money to put those kids as it is to provide one. So, and I would say this figure, I'm hopeful that's not going to be at that level at this point. That's just where we are right now. So as things shift, if a student changes program mid-year, it could be that they were on a van with 3 or 4 kids, and all of a sudden there's a change in placement, and now we have to find a van or hire a van for one student. So that just increases the cost.
I remember from budgets years ago, I thought there was discussion about parents moving their own disabled child and being reimbursed by the district.
Yep.
Do we still pursue that and try to effectuate that?
Well, we don't, I wouldn't say we try to, because legally they are.
I know we're obligated to.
No, but if you look at
understand
I think if you look at the line item, there is monies in there for.
Yeah, it's 42,000 in the special ed transportation. It's the first line parent reimbursement. So there's 42,000 that's going directly to parents.
Right. But I'm just asking, do we try to, reach out to parents still, or do you just kind of deal with it the way it is?
think it depends
Is there
on-
any savings to have the parents do it, is what I'm asking?
It is, but I think it really depends on the situation, because it's a mechanism we can use, but we are obligated to provide a bus. So it is also a hardship for families if they're both working. So it's not something we can, but in certain circumstances, it makes sense. I mean, with the students that we use it for, it made sense because of a number of factors in terms of, the parent, wanted to do it, or the their child might have had more behaviors on the van, and they just said, you know what, it's easier for me to just bring the student, so. So we really, I have to be careful with that. I can't, sort of call everybody up and say, hey, would you like to do this? But in certain circumstances, I will, in terms of, if it makes sense so it's offered sometimes, especially if something's not going well, or it just makes sense for certain.
It's also hard with consistency, because they can't say, I'm going to transport now, and then tomorrow I need the van, so we need the van or not. So a parent needs to be able to say, every day I can bring my child, and I can be at the right time, at the right place, at the right time to pick up my child. So
tough.
It's rare, yeah.
The other thing is we haven't, because we're not exactly sure how it's going to work, but the state is looking to fund more through circuit breaker, fund transportation. So we don't know exactly how that's going to be calculated. So that likely, in the next couple of months, we'll have more information on that. So that'll likely be a resource we can offset that cost, so.
So can I say one thing? Dave just mentioned circuit breaker. So just to clarify, in the special ed tuitions 9,000, it shows an offset of 1.1 million for circuit breaker, which is up from last year. That's not new money that we've assumed yet because of the Student Opportunity Act. That's actually because of some really high costs this year that we'll get reimbursed for next year. So just to make sure this is clear, we haven't assumed anything new in regards to the SOA.
And then, David, on your disability codes, where you have a breakdown of all the different students with the different codes, 03 talks about communication. Is that anything more than speech when it says communication?
It's typically used for kids with receptive or expressive language. It's just communication. A lot of times you might see that diagnosis for younger kids, when they first get, when they're first eligible. So yeah, it's typically, it relates to, understanding and expressing, but it's mostly speech.
And in that category, I think we had about 64 students under that disability code for the communication.
Yeah.
And so my next question is, you're contracting for speech services in Salisbury for about $30,000. Do we have a speech therapist in Salisbury?
We do. There's one full-time speech path in Salisbury, and then Kathy Caton works at the middle school part-time, but we just needed someone else to supplement the services. So what was happening is the speech pathologist really had a group, too many kids, and it was just something.
64 kids is a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and now I'm going to ask really kind of a callous question, if you will, and I apologize to everyone,
That's
but I'm preempting what Brian is going to jump into about full-day kindergarten. And so if we go to full-day kindergarten, do you anticipate that you'll be seeing more children with needs, SPED needs, if we go to full, or is everybody accessing it at 3 years old now?
I don't think because it's really going to be. No, I guess I wouldn't see any more accessing it.
I'm sorry?
I said I guess I wouldn't see any more kids with special
So there won't be
education.
an increase? It's your feeling that most people that have children with needs are already in the district at 3 years old?
So they're in preschool as of grade 3, or
Right,
age
and
3.
And I think we're one of the few districts that don't have full-day kindergarten,
Right.
so
Yeah.
I think that would just be, something it's almost a detriment to us in a way, so I don't think people are going to suddenly come in here because we have full-day kindergarten.
Right, and because we have, in the full-day program, if an IEP dictates a full-day program, that child attends the full-day program tuition-free currently. So the reality is, could there be more? Of course, it could be, 1, 2, but there isn't going to be a massive increase or a substantial increase because of the change to full-day K, because the payment structure is already there.
And I know it's a hard question to ask. I just wanted to know if you
Yeah, absolutely.
anticipated there would be a problem.
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Can I rephrase this question just to make sure that we all understand? I think what you're trying to ask is, as they're going to full day, is there going to be an additional cost for services that we are paying for half a day right now that we might need to pay for the full day? Is that accurate?
No.
Okay, so then that question would come from me. Would there be an increased cost that you would anticipate that we would need to cover somebody that would be going full day as opposed to the half day?
I don't think so, because right now, if a student has a disability that requires full-day services, so it's not just a given. So there are students with that go to half-day K that have disabilities. So it's not just a given. It's somebody with a significant need. They're already getting the services that they would need. So no, it would just be I mean, honestly, it would be probably, it would be a positive thing because the district, because the kids will be getting more instruction earlier, and moving forward, there probably would be less need for services. So I don't see that.
Any other questions down there? Aaron, did you have more? That was it? Okay. Back to Dina? No? Okay.
For the closer?
I'm always the closer. So, kind of starting at the beginning, I want to just go back to the ETCs real quick.
Yep.
Not trying to get a handle on the FTEs, but more trying to get a handle on the personnel. So I know right now you have people who are essentially split between doing an ETC position and a special ed position. So would the goal be to move those people into a full-time ETC and then hire a half-time special education teacher?
That would be the goal.
That would be,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So it wouldn't be a situation where you'd have either two half people or something like
Yeah,
that?
no, it would
That
just be-
sounds
We want one person
Right,
who's the full-time
one person
ETC.
who's a full-time
Yep.
ETC,
Right.
and then, because, it's just the way it's phrased, right? It looks like
Yeah,
you're
no,
hiring
it's-
ETCs,
it's a
but you're
little
really,
confusing.
yeah, you're hiring a.
Yeah, all kind of
special ed.
transition and movement could happen,
Yep.
but that's the substantive, yes, one
Yep.
full-time.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Just going through real quick, my notes. After that. Same question I was asking everyone else, I think, up here. Busing, that should change with the transportation contract, right? So these numbers may be changing down the road? Or are these more
Hopefully, they will be
locked?
changing down, because what I would say now, we're estimating on what we're currently doing, but just in the last couple of weeks, we just reviewed the December bills, so what I wanted to do is, rather than start cutting out now, is wait, since we have 2 months to really finalize the budget, so I would say, even with an increase, if we have an increase,
Okay.
this should cover it as far as, for now. I mean, so, again, what I try to put the high water numbers in for now, and then, but I think also this year, what we really have to be careful of is, given we don't have any backup for next year with the E&D, and we used to have circuit break and all these extras that, because, I mean, to be honest, special ed usually goes over every year.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be very prudent and not just,
Yeah.
try to get to a number, so right now, but we have, I mean, given we have 2 months, so when we review 2 more months of bills, we'll have a much better sense of, and then I'll know probably in a couple of months, like whether some of these kids are actually graduating. So like I said, in the out-of-district right now, there's placeholders for kids that are, that may or may not be out-of-district placements. I've got a couple emails lately that people may be moving, so I don't want to jinx myself, but I just, so there's all, but as of right, so I'm just giving you the story as of today.
But just to clarify, you're asking about the contract?
Yep.
So that is not out to bid?
Okay.
So that is regular day,
My
big
questions.
yellow bus transportation that's out to bid. We do not have to bid special ed transportation. So generally speaking, we've had a very good relationship with NRT since they won our initial bid. And we were many years without a contract and they kept rates the same. We're increasing them $1 a day. So yes, that will not be subject to the same. It could change, but we could then look to a different provider.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Under hearing impaired equipment, I remember over past years, we've had to retrofit classrooms as well. We were doing that as the students moved up. Are those classroom retrofits done, or are they included in here and they're just not called out separately?
So usually if we have a specific student that needs that, we've had students that have come from elementary schools, although before Pine Grove was redone, and then the middle school, we had to buy some panels for classrooms. So that work's already been done.
Okay.
So if a new student so there's 2 issues. One could be sound panels, and then some kids just need FM systems.
Okay.
So I think right now, we don't have any kids on the radar that need anything done in the classrooms. That's already been, rather than sort of move everything, because what I've been told is trying to move panels and we've steadily just.
Yeah, we've been adding.
Left them there. So right now, that line item is for a student that might need an individual FM system. So the
Okay.
teacher has a microphone, the student has an earpiece, and that's,
Okay.
yeah, so that's just, yeah.
right.
Because a classroom would be just $10,000 alone to retrofit.
I was just going to
so, yeah.
say, it would be nice to know that we're just done with that, at least
Yeah,
for now.
for now,
and,
yeah.
You know, it's not going to be a yearly
Yeah,
incurred cost.
it's really student-specific. so.
Okay, all right. This may be a case of, you know, you doing a nice thing and me asking about it now, but on the out-of-district special education enrollment history and trends and the placement history, I was just curious why the totals don't match.
Which one? Can you refer to the page?
Yeah, sorry, it's page 11. So I'm looking down the left-hand side of the top chart, and I was thinking it was going to match across the bottom of the bottom chart, but it doesn't.
So I'm sorry, I'm not, so I'm on page 11.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the top chart is the out-of-district special education enrollment history and trends, and the total is down the left-hand side, just to the right of the years.
Oh, you say for 1920, this is showing 42 students
yeah.
out at the top and 40 at the bottom.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good question. I can find out, but I don't know the answer right now.
okay. All right. I was just curious on that.
No, that's a good question.
Special education, are we assuming 75%? Is that what this assumes?
Yep.
75%, but no transportation?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
If we don't get 75%, we're storming the castle.
Right.
Just saying.
All right. And just since you brought it back up in the beginning, I wanted to just come back to the LIFT program really quick and ask, do you know about how many students have been through that? And I know when we were talking about it last year, there was kind of this idea of like, it could be students who are just kind of classroom avoidant. It could be students that were only part-time because they were recovering
Yep.
from a concussion, I think, was one of the things we talked about. Like, there were all these different reasons. So I was just wondering, A, if you knew how many students had moved through there, and B, kind of what the breakdown was on the students that we're actually seeing come through there.
I'm going to need to phone a friend on this one.
Oh,
Because again, it's not a special ed program per se, so I
Right.
know those students, but
you opened the door, so.
Patrick, this does not get added to your time, just so you know.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I believe we've had 12 students go through the program. That was the number I gave last night. The majority of the students that have gone through have been students that are returning from mental health hospitalization. That's kind of the target population that we're typically looking at. We have a few other students that I'm going to try to be a little bit vague because they
Yep.
would be easily identifiable, but that have other either medical or other circumstances that have caused that to be the appropriate fit.
Okay.
And so the program, as of right now, has been able to help support a little bit of a wide variety of students. We haven't seen as many students with concussion as the appropriate fit yet, although that's a possibility. One of the things that they recommend when you're starting a Bridge or Bright program, ours being termed LIFT, but when you're starting one of the programs is to really be mindful of what core group you're identifying as the population that you're serving, especially in year one. And so we've been very mindful of keeping a set cohort, typically that's students returning from mental health hospitalization, and then identifying a select few others that are appropriate based on specific need. But school avoidance students, they say, is the group to not try to tackle in the first few years because that's the most challenging group to be met with success around.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Deb?
If this has already been discussed, just tell me and I'll check in later. This was about the special ed contracted services.
Yep.
And I understand in some cases it makes much more sense to hire an outside contractor than it does to have an employee. But there were a couple of things on here where I just wondered what the thinking was between, as far as not hiring an employee, a staff person. And then while Narissa was talking, I see we've got a teacher of the deaf that's going to be contracted for $66,000, but we don't have a classroom that is retrofitted, or is that?
So that particular line item is the person is not an employee of Triton School District. we contract with another school because the individual has a certification as an interpreter.
So that would be the role.
So basically,
here?
that is the actual salary of what the person costs, but in doing some research, it's very hard to actually, there are very strict rules when you're hiring an interpreter. So this person
Okay.
comes from an organization that specifically works with children. So that's basically the salary of one full-time person.
And the speech services and nursing services, those, the new items, yes, I see that. But what was the reasoning
I
for not?
think if you look at in terms of, I mean, some of it could be in terms of availability and also adding benefits. So if you are contracting, obviously you pay a higher rate by the hour.
Right.
But obviously if it gets up above a 0.5, then you're paying benefits as well. That could be another 20 right now. So certainly certainly both of those things could be sort of looked at, and if it made sense to hire, if you could find someone that was willing to work at just a couple days a week. So sometimes that's really difficult to find people that, people want full-time jobs or at least half-time jobs. So that's just, so yeah, that certainly could be at some point.
I was going to say.
Position that we hired, yeah.
Yeah, so historically, so you have to pass a 3-part test to be able to be a contractor. It has to be work outside the scope of what we do. They have to hold themselves out as doing this work for others, and they have to be free from control. So that's this kind of state standard. So we've vacillated, so the BCBA's, for years we've been contracting, because we couldn't find someone to hire. But when we don't have someone who's at least, we don't have at least a half-time position's worth of work or a full-time position's worth of work, if we hire someone, regardless of whether that student stays, the needs change, we have a new hire. So if that person leaves, we're paying unemployment, we're paying all of those things. So generally, the way we've worked is, when there's flexibility, as kids are changing and it's fluid, we keep it as a contract. As soon as there's, enough work for a substantive position, it's always better to hire the people. I mean, hands down. Yes, it costs us benefits and all of that, but we always want to have the person hired, because then we have the person half-time, full-time, to be able to service anyone, as in the case with the BCBA's. Same money, and we have them here both full-time. So it's one of those things we just watch all the time. And I know Michelle's been watching it for the last 3 years, and Kyle will now watch it in the future. So that's just something we've just kind of ebbed and flowed over the years.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? All right, thank you. Moving on to district-wide technology. You're good.
First time with the new mic, Hello,
Not worrying
everyone.
it's going to cut out in the middle of your presentation, right?
Well, that's okay. I'll talk really loud. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. I'm here to present the FY21 technology budget, and I'll start by highlighting just a few of the many department successes. Over the summer, we replaced all elementary school computer lab PCs with Chrome bases, and the high school library computer lab with all-in-one PCs. All 40 of our servers are now virtual servers. So that means less hardware to fail and easily brought back online if they ever go down. All 3,500 assets in the district, desktop PCs, Chromebooks, Chromebases, iPads, iMacs, Wi-Fi apps, phones, projectors, smartboards, printers, copiers, etc., have been asset tagged with barcodes and entered into our inventory system. And for each phase of the Pine Grove rebuild, we moved technology into temporary rooms and then back into new permanent rooms, a lot of small moves throughout the year, requiring us to rename devices within our inventory system each time they were moved, and ensuring that technology was up and running for each of these 3 phases. We support 5 schools with only 2 technicians who provide excellent customer service. Although, with the technology increasing at a very rapid pace in the district, the response time has started to increase. which doesn't make the department very happy because we pride ourselves on really fast turnaround. You've been hearing a lot about the technology working group that has been meeting to create a long-term vision for our students' technological proficiency and how that impacts our teaching instead of just looking at devices. The goal is to have this group present their recommendations by end of this school year. I am hoping that one of the recommendations will be to implement a one-to-one device program. With that said, I'd like to bring your attention to our request on page 2 for a technology integration specialist. Since becoming a Google for Education district a few years ago, all 5 schools have adopted the daily practices of using Google Classroom and utilizing the full suite of applications offered. The district has also increased the use of digital curriculum, as well as increasing the amount of computer hardware such as Chromebooks, iPads, and smartboards. We see a huge benefit to having a technology information specialist integration specialist on staff who will work with the schools and the technology department. For example, this person could go on site to the elementary schools with our technology technician during the weekly tech time and be available at the high school and middle school campus as well to provide the essential support needed by staff to integrate their digital curriculum. They could become more proficient with Google Suite, know their Chromebooks a little better, use their iPads and smartboards in any future technology. We also see this person being responsible for delivering technology professional development for the district as well. The district had this position at each elementary school, but the position was cut a few years ago. The school tech specialist worked with the IT department. They would do basic troubleshooting, help install programs, as well as answer teachers' tech questions, and often helped teachers use technology in their classroom. What's happening now is that the IT department is being asked to help teachers with their classroom technology. We are a very small department, and our jobs revolve around break, fix, and installation, and the occasional answer to, how do I do this? So we are hoping that this person will fill the need. This brings us to page 3 of the budget. And I will just go over the recommendations for changes in technology spending and rationale. For the supplies and materials line, we're requesting an additional $3,000, and the reason is for the unexpected damage replacement of phones. We have 2 leases that are come due next fall. They're a few weeks apart in their coming due, and we chose not to replace them. We don't need to have new phones. The phone itself is perfectly fine. We do have a support in the contracted services for any software updates, but the phone itself is fine. The only thing that will go wrong could be handsets, the base, the cords. And what we found is that over the last year or so, we've replaced about 12 handsets and cords and about 3 bases. So we're just asking for a little increase to help us support those phones, our phone system. In contracted services, several vendors have increased or decreased their prices, and in addition, we're asking for 3 new services below. The first one is called Wasabi. It's for cloud data backup. Right now, we have... It's always food. Yeah, the next one's about food, too. We have on-site backup in the NOC, so all of our data is backed up. It's redundant. However, if, God forbid, anything should happen, if, gets flooded, gets burned, or whatever, our data would be at risk. So this would provide cloud backup for our data. The other request is for a status cake. We're into the foods. It's a website and external network monitoring software. What it does is it alerts IT of issues with our website, our VPN access from outside, Infinite Vision's payroll site, etc. So we're alerted right away if there's ever an issue with any of those programs, so that we don't wait for someone to send us a ticket and we get flooded with tickets, because we'll be alerted right away, and we can hopefully stem the tide of all of the the trickle effect of an issue. And the third request is for a program called Level Data. Now this, I loved when we demoed it. It's just amazing. It's really an essential software tool, especially as we're bringing more and more programs in that when I say we, it's the IT department that has to support with data. And I have a little show and tell. It's a little flow chart. I know it's a little eye chart here, but what this is a map of the data that we have to manually update each time. There are a couple over here that come from Aspen that we do with nightly jobs. You know, we FTP them to these different programs, but mostly we have to manually update. So what Level Data does, it starts with a primary source, and the primary source for us will be Aspen, because Aspen is what we use to submit our data to the state for reporting, so that data has to be accurate. It has to be 100% correct. So what this program does is it starts with the primary source, and it will sync the data between our other systems. Now, at the beginning of every school year, late August and early September, all students, and not staff, but all students, they get rolled automatically in Aspen. It's an automatic thing. We don't have to do anything with that. Again, it's the primary source. So what happens when we roll the year, the students now move to the next grade level, 6th graders move to the middle school, 8th graders move to the high school. It's all done automatically. We then take all of those data, we have to pull lots of CSV files, and then we have to manually update our Active Directory so that they make sure they're in the correct pockets of data. We have to manually update our G Suite for their Google. We have to manually update PaperCut, Mitel, Clever. I mean, we have quite a few, and that's where errors get introduced. And all during the year, as new students come and go, as staff come and go, it will be an automatic push, and then the data is more streamlined and obviously synced up. Being such a small department, we don't have that luxury to spend hours and hours of manual update, monitoring, checking, you know, this database against that database. It's what we have been doing, and it's very long, but it's also important that we have accurate data, and that's really where I'm going back to, is starting with the primary source in Aspen. And so that's what Level Data will do for us. Going into the hardware-software acquisition line, we have a couple of leases that are expiring. One of them is for our switches and storage. We will be getting we are replacing the storage array network, which was part of that, so we will renew part of the lease for that. But we also are going to buy out 3 camera footage storage devices, because they have a very long shelf life. We don't need to have brand new devices in, but we do need to have the data stored, the camera footage stored. So we're going to buy those out and have them on site, but replace our storage array network. The other lease that's expiring, as I said earlier, it's for the district phone system. So I don't need to go through that again. The third one is adding a cloud-ready web filter, specifically made for education. What this web filter will do, it catches behavior such as suicide or self-harm verbiage, drug usage, cyberbullying, violent threats, and violations of SIPA. It also allows us to filter content on district devices even when they are not connected to the district network. So this is kind of being put in place before we go to one-to-one, because, you know, I'm kind of hoping that's going to happen. So we put this in place. But that's another benefit to it. But it's really important to have, you know, to catch the SIPA violations. We also have Sophos, which catches some of these things, but what we need is an additional, much stronger web filter. That brings us to page 4 for instructional hardware and software. We have lots of leases being come due this year. We have the staff PC desktops that lease has come due, as well as the staff Chromebook lease, which is more towards the fall, but the staff PC desktops is this summer. What we've chosen to do is to renew each of those leases, but for only 1 year. So it's a limited lease for 1 year, which will give us the time to look at alternatives, to not having every staff person have 2 devices. There's really no need for that. What we've seen in the other districts, and I've been watching this for almost a year with the tech directors email group, a lot of them have gone to a Chromebook, a large screen Chromebook for their staff. So it gives them the mobility, plus it gives them the device that the students are using. So, you know, the students have a Chromebook, they have a Chromebook, there's that, there's the, you know, the same training for the two of them. But not every staff member, it's not going to be a one-to-one. It's not going to be everybody gets a Chromebook, because that's unrealistic. There are some staff that have to have PCs because of the nature of their position or their job. All the secretaries, they really need to work with PCs. The head custodians, because of the HVAC software that runs on PCs, it does not run on Chromebooks. The high school business teachers, the high school engineering teachers. So there are pockets of people who will get PCs. So we're going to look at all our users and make the right decision for each user, but the most cost-effective, but also the correct one that will work with all of our peripherals. Because if we have a Chromebook, we have to make sure that particular model works for those teachers who are plugging in their smart boards or their dock cameras or, you know, whatever peripheral. So we're going to be doing that, those demos over the next 6 months or so. We are requesting $28,900 for a new lease to replace all purchased 2014 and 2015 Chromebooks that are in the district. There are 306 of them throughout all 5 schools. They're very old. They will soon no longer be able to be updated by the Google updates, causing a possible security breach. Also, I said many of them, but it's more like all of them, have missing keys, and at this point we can't even replace them. We can't find replacements because they are older models, so they're really not usable. And as of course the 306, that's quite a bit. We're also requesting $1,964 for 15 iPads for the EL students who need these devices to communicate with staff and fellow students. Also requesting $1,800 to replace old purchased laptops used for the high school programming department, and also $965 to replace old purchased laptops, but with Chromebooks. Now, both of those programs, the high school, the programming department and the journalism department, they were given a very generous amount of money back, a few years back, from a parent. And so there were 10 laptops purchased for each of those groups. These laptops are old and should be replaced at this point. So the high school programming definitely need laptops. For what they do, they need a laptop. But for the journalism department, they said that they could use Chromebooks, actually would prefer Chromebooks. So that's why it's only $965 a year to replace those. And both of them, these are all leases that I'm talking about. We're also requesting $4,850 for a lease for Chromebooks for IAs in the high school and middle school. They're currently using student Chromebooks, and several of them are using the staff Chromebooks, because our staff Chromebook lease is for 300 Chromebooks, and not every staff member uses one, plus we had some extras. So we've dispersed them to some of the IAs. They like to use them. They have been using them. It would be best if they would have their own lease, you know, just for the IAs, because those Chromebooks have to be returned in a year with that other lease. I mean, we're going to start with the high school and middle school. I was talking to Kim about that, and if the IA, if this program works well, I mean, we know that they're using them a lot here in the high school and the middle school, but we would roll it out to the elementary school IAs if we see that it works. So I would like to go back to page 3. Did you want me to go through line item last line? I didn't think so. Okay, good answer. But back on page 3, I just want to bring your attention to the line items. Actually, the last one. We are, even with all of the requests that we're asking for, we're still $7,230 less than last year. And that's because of the way we're handling the leases. So, kind of short and sweet.
Can I ask you a question to clarify? So you talked for the technology integration specialist. I think you used a statistic in regards to the help desk request tickets that are break fix versus supporting So what was the breakdown?
Did you
not- did I make it up?
I don't have a breakdown.
So when we get help desk tickets, so the request for the TIS is a member of the tech staff that will be doing more support for systems. So like on a guess, like out of the help desk tickets, how many are break fix versus how many are, I need help with SPED, I need help with iReady, I need help with G Suite?
I would have to get that data, but I don't know, 80/20? I would say
Break
more
fix
20.
versus-
Yeah, 80
okay.
with the break fix. Now, I wouldn't see this person to be just, a part of the technology department just for the tickets. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I would hope that they would find needs at each of the schools and be there to integrate, and then
Absolutely.
come back with us, as, when we talk about what kind of software that they're being asked to do, so that we would also get cross-training, because that's what my department has been asking for. We would love to learn some of these, these curriculum, the online curriculum, not to the extent that the teachers know it, but to at least be able to talk intelligently of, oh, here's how you start the program, here's where you can get reports, here's, some help. We just don't have the bandwidth. So we're looking for a teacher to be able to do that, bridge that gap that we used to have.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Dina?
Deb, the $3,000 increase you're asking for the replacement or the damage to phones, that seems a little bit high to me, but maybe I'm thinking of a basic phone. Can you kind of give further explanation as to the cost?
Well, what we found that to replace handsets with cords, it's about $20, and bases is about $35, $40. It's just a guesstimate over the next several, well, I guess it would be just the 1 year for the 3,000. But it's an unknown, because we don't have, we're not getting new equipment, so we just want to make sure that the equipment we have, that we can service.
So we now own this, so the
'Cause we'll
lease was
own
paid
these.
off, but what do you call it, administrative handset that's got, 10 lines.
Those are more
I think they're like
expensive,
$300
yes.
a piece.
Yeah,
So
those are the more
when
expensive
those go,
ones.
it's bigger than a phone cord and a handset.
Any other questions? I don't have any either. I know. So thank you, Deb. Appreciate it. Before Brian starts, because we know that, this is going to be a long and tough section, I have had a request to take a 5-minute break, because I think everybody needs to get up, walk around, go grab another drink of water, hit the bathroom. So
Brief.
we're going to do that. You can think hard on what you're going to say, so that you come in prepared. All right.
Yeah, although I'm not able to really move much because there are several pieces that come apart. So if I wiggle it, it might collapse. It could be. My posting for the day. Otherwise, it's midnight. Is that a requirement? It's my own requirement. I try Thank you very much. Great to be here. Nice to see you again. Oh, no kidding. Well, you made it. I'm still learning. I just so I just we're new. Yeah, you know what? That's important.
It is freezing in here. I know the budget is frozen, but we're all going to be sick. I'm seeing my breath. It's so cold.
Yeah, you ready?
Are we back online?
Yeah? If you're ready, we're ready.
All right.
You ready?
All right.
Okay. No, wait, I gotta introduce you. So we're moving on to district-wide operations and programs from the superintendent.
Okay, so last night, last presentation, this is unfortunately the one that has the biggest, scariest numbers in it. A lot of the numbers that are in this section are actually sunk costs, costs that we don't have control over. But before we do that, I do want to talk about a few things that we've had on the agenda in the discussion for several years, but I think they're important points that we have to continue to talk about in regards to new costs district-wide. So the first is full-day kindergarten. We have talked about this and talked about this. We are now, every year, we're a smaller, one of a smaller and smaller number of districts statewide that are not offering free full-day K. The biggest change this year in regards to being proactive is the fact that there is talk about legislation requiring this. So again, easy legislation when 94% of the state is going to say, great, we already do it. For those of us in the very small percentage, it would be a significant hardship right away. So we've had lots of discussions over the year of how to do this, and so what I'm proposing is that we phase this in. So we collect, our current tuition is just shy of $3,000 at $2,950. We collect approximately $250,000 in revenue per year. So I'm suggesting that we phase this in over 3 years to get to that point. It would be an increase in the general fund of about $80,000 in that vicinity. And my proposal would be that we go from $2,950 to $2,000 next year. The following year, we would go to $1,000, and the following year, we would go to $0. So each of those years, each of those 3 years, we would have to add, and again, it would fluctuate year over year, but roughly $75,000, $80,000 to the budget. Obviously, legislation could happen quickly, and we would be forced to do it sooner than that, but I think we need to take a step towards that as a focus for this year. Number 2 is not a phased approach, it's just a flat-out eliminating of parking fees. You know my opinion on parking fees. It's not a huge amount of money. I think there's a disparity and an equity issue going on, as well as the amount of time and energy that it takes to collect the fees is not at all proportionate to the return that we get. So certainly, there's a system that we have in our office for tracking the revenue, and it offsets snow removal costs, so there's a real purpose for that. But I will say thank you to Scott Brennan, who is the parking police, who spends way too much time every day chasing kids down, chasing cars down. It's just, as I said, it's just a disproportionate relationship between the benefit and the money that we get. That would be an increase of $20,000. It's ranged, depending on the number of students that are parking each year, $13,000 to $25,000. $20,000 is the average there. Athletics fees, this is something we've talked about this, haven't formally proposed it before. This is something that I've seen and heard about, a lot of districts talking about. Pentucket did actually decrease, they cut their fees in half. Other districts are talking about doing the same. And in an age where we've said this over and over, and we're experiencing the downside of students choicing out this year, we are in a competitive education market in public education. It's a space that we weren't in 30 years ago, but education is competitive, whether it's public schools through choice, whether it's charters, vocational schools, or private schools. So, as we talk about our budgets, building projects, continuing to burden the taxpayers, I think that at the same time, if we can talk about removing fees, there's a nice statement there to say we get it, and we're going to move back towards FAPE, which is a free and appropriate public education, like we all had as kids, where we didn't pay for anything. So I think there's certainly not a ticking clock like there is with full day K, but I think it's something that would be a powerful statement to say that we want all kids participating, regardless of whether you can afford it or not. And again, it's a significant amount of money that's collected, $300,000 for all fees. Again, so that's everything from elementary instrumental to band, who we can hear performing tonight, to athletics, all fees, all across the board. So again, that would be a $75,000, and I'm proposing that gets phased over 4 years. So basically, high school user fees for athletics would be reduced by $90 a year. Middle school athletics user fees would be reduced by $65 per year. The all $100 kind of category, including elementary instrumental, would be decreased by $25 per year, and then all $50 activities would be decreased by $10 a year. So currently, athletics fees are $350 at the high school, $250 at the middle school, and then depending on the program, $100 or $50. So we have a family cap currently of $1,750, which is an astronomically high number. It's more than many parents are paying for club sports in any given year. So it's something that I'm passionate about, and I think that we need to make a move toward that goal. Restoration of the faculty senate stipend, this is something we put into the contract last cycle, so 3 years ago. It would put 5 individuals at every school and give the principals a person who is paid to be part of a leadership team within the school. They'd be able to select these people, and obviously, when we're paying people to do work, it's just, you can expect more out of someone who's getting paid to do the job than you can for volunteers. The amount of volunteer time that our teachers give is amazing. But I think this is something that if we want to promote leadership within the buildings, this is something that's important. So those are the 4 new proposals in regards to new spending. The following pages include all the regular series increases. That number, staring at you there, $1,025,195, is a bigger number than we've seen in a very long time. Different this year is that it's not the usual suspect, the gentleman to my right, who we're usually blaming, Dave, right, for it's always the special education driving the cost, not you, Kim. So it's different this year, and I'll just walk you quickly through the changes, but this is in a year that we knew, we've been watching the special education numbers and age outs, and we're feeling really good about that. There've been some changes that we weren't expecting that are gonna make this a difficult year again. On the first page there, the only change in all of those lines is a $2,500 reduction. That's actually, we paid the current year, the final year of the policy redo process. So it's actually $3,500, but we keep $1,000 there because we still host it with them and they maintain it. Over the page, substitutes, proposing that we add $25,000. If you look at FY19, we spent $299,525. In fiscal 20, we talked about increasing that number. We didn't. It's currently at $275,000. It's a rare year where we don't bump up against that $300,000 figure, so it certainly is prudent to adjust that accordingly. Down below, transportation regular services, again, showing a 4% increase, so the increase would be $58,955, and transportation for homeless students would go up $9,000. The homeless increase we base purely on numbers, actual roster, versus the increase in the yellow buses, which is the close to 60,000. That is based on the best intel that we have right now. As of next Thursday, that number, as we said last night or earlier tonight, can tell you the days are blending. Burlington saw a close to 30% increase in their transportation costs in their last contract. I firmly believe, I'm very confident that that's not happening. And all signs are pointing towards a much more reasonable increase, but that number could absolutely adjust as we go forward over the next week and a half. The next page in regards to facilities costs, there's just some general adjustments. The one that jumps out is actually the maintenance repair services at Pine Grove and the supplies at Pine Grove. So with a building that actually has HVAC, go figure, that has all new systems and not devices, but all of the structures and systems within the building, you're now those lines are brought in line with, if you look at the comparables at Newbury and at Salisbury, the numbers are very much in line, but this is based on new service contracts, basically for mechanicals that didn't exist at Pine Grove pre-renovation. The decrease in cleaning services of $8,400 is actually based on a contracted rate. You can see we were expecting an increase in the cost, and we're able to recontract for several years at the same FY19 cost. So you can see it going back down to the FY19 actual. Waste removal, same through some management, that is going to go down. And then the grounds, they're still working on the best way to do it, but the way that it was bid out last time, pulling line striping of the fields, trying to reduce the cost, inevitably when that bid bid back higher. So it's a $25,000 increase for grounds. And again, that's this entire campus, and then the landscaping at the 3 elementaries as well. So the towns mow backfields, if you will, at each of the elementary schools. All of the grass around the schools, playgrounds, mulching beds, all of that is part of a district-wide cost. So that $200,000 is landscaping and grounds maintenance
for the entire district, obviously, the bulk of that is spent on this campus and all those fields out there. Excuse me, continuing over the page, this is the page with some significant increases. Right at the top of the page there is one that we weren't expecting, $168,000 for Essex County retirement. Again, that is a sunk cost. That is our portion of the shared retiree costs for anyone who is not in Mass Teachers. Mass Teachers, we, as a licensed professional, pay into Mass Teachers our 9, 10, 11%. The state matches that. The same happens for any of those who are not part of the Mass Teachers, but we as the district pay that match. So that's that number. It's a set funding schedule. We're part of the Essex County retirement system. We're 3.1% of the total system, so it's a pure calculation governed through PERAC. It's not someone making up numbers and just sending them to us, but there is a very aggressive funding schedule that was redone recently, and actually Kyle and I were talking about this because he's had some experience working as an auditor through Essex, and it's aggressive, but it's unfortunately a number we're assessed and we have to pay it. All of the medicals, we're assuming at 10% at this point, so that includes retiree Blue Cross and the standard medical insurance. Medicare district match is actually, we pay, none of us pay into Social Security, but we pay the FICA portion of that. So that's an increase based on total payroll. And you can see unemployment insurance went down $26,000. That's purely based on the fact that the folks who we assumed with any reductions, it's actually dating back 2 years ago, that the majority of folks have fallen off. There are folks who are on the roster and will continue to come back on the roster. MEDEX payments is for retirees, and that's generally a smaller renewal. That's on January every year. So $665,000 for insurances. It's not a small figure. Last year, we had a reduction, you'll remember, because that was a PEC negotiations year. So we negotiated a change in healthcare plans. So we actually went backwards last year. And obviously, combined, if you take out the Essex County, you're approaching still close to $500,000 for insurances. To note there, the dental was a 2-year rate when we were negotiating with the PEC. We changed from Delta to Blue Cross, and they actually locked for 2 years. So this will be, it's this year and fiscal 21. Over the page, the piece we've been talking about, probably the piece I'm most discouraged about is that the school choice increase. As we've talked about, we have 42 new students who have choiced out this year. 20 of them we've never seen in our roster before. Still trying to figure out where these students came from, but we have not seen an uptick like that in many years, and without having any sense of why it happened. So again, the impact this year is $207,000, but because of the number of students who will graduate out, we assume the same roster and then graduate the students who are currently seniors. We also saw an uptick in charter numbers as well. I believe the number was 46 last year, and there's currently 57 students at River Valley. So that adds $216,000 to the total costs. I won't go through the detail on the following pages. Certainly you can ask questions, but that net increase, before we talk about anything else, and again, in these presentations, we don't talk about sunk costs for salaries. We'll have all that data for you for next Saturday, but you can expect that figure is going to be close to $900,000 as it usually is. So on this page, again, this doesn't include the numbers for reduced full-day K or reducing user fees, just the sunk cost is $1 million, and that number is going to be close to $2 million by the time we get to next Saturday. It wasn't 10 minutes, but it was fairly long.
Questions from the committee? Maureen?
I have a kindergarten question, Brian. So if we do decide to move in the direction of phasing it in over, 3 years, right?
Yep.
I know there are some parents that feel strongly about half-day kindergarten. Would we allow would it go right to full day and everybody has to do full day, or would we allow parents to continue to take advantage of a half-day program?
So when the state uses the term universal full-day kindergarten, it's the only program you offer. So currently, we allow parents to pick up students at midday. We've been able to structure the day in a way that the majority of the academics, if you will, are in the first half of the day. It's not necessarily the best way to structure a day, but that would be a decision we would have to make.
Right, but I mean, if the state's not saying it yet,
Right.
but we're trying to be proactive in phasing it in.
My understanding,
I
and tell me if
just
I'm
know that
wrong.
there are parents that do believe in
Yep.
there's just a half-day program.
Yep, I had one of each. I had a full and a half day, and it was perfect for both of them. But absolutely, my understanding at this point is we would have autonomy to make that choice, that we could continue if we decided. We would structure it as full-day classes, which the majority are now.
Yeah.
And half-day students would leave at midday. But my understanding, the way the state is thinking about it, if it's legislated as full-day K, everyone does full-day K.
Okay.
It's that key, that you'll hear the term universal full-day K.
So if I can clarify on that a little bit, the bills, because I went back and found them and read them, they actually don't specifically call for full-day K. What they do is they say that 5-year-olds must now attend a public school for a full day. And because of that, because of FAPE, we then have to provide the full day for free. So that's essentially what forces it. And they don't have a time frame on them. That was one of Brian's questions when I went back and looked through was, is it a, like, by X day? And as far as the bills are drafted right now, they do not have a time frame on them. Erin?
On the student parking fees, do you see or anticipate an increase in the number of students that are interested in parking if you do eliminate the fee? And do we have enough spots to cover the students so that they're not going to be competing for space?
So yes, I would anticipate an increase, and the follow-up to that would be we would still have to control it and still assign spaces. So give spaces, first to seniors and then juniors and have a system in place. But I don't know the exact number to tell you, could we absolutely get every student who wants a spot, a space? I'd have to count that up. But it worked before we had the fee, and we have fewer students on campus. So my guess is we probably have pretty close to the number to be able to give, obviously you're not driving until your junior year, seniors and juniors the space. But it would potentially have to be a lottery for juniors, yeah. You guys?
Dina?
Can I ask just a follow-up question on that? Would you consider still leaving spaces for daily parkers? Because there are sometimes kids that, don't drive regularly to school, but they might have a doctor's appointment or some sort of reason that they would have to leave school early. So just to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think we'd have to work all of that out. 'cause
Spaces open.
That I know that system, the $1 a day system currently works very well. And I don't know the exact number of spots. It's a dozen spots or whatever it is that's dedicated for that. How many? More. There's a lot of $1 a dayers. Yeah. Exactly, yep.
I was just going to say, I think if you were to poll the students, that 20,000 that we collect, I would say a large percent of it is coming out of the pockets of the kids, not the parents, because I know my own kids pay for their parking pass to be responsible.
Yes.
So I agree with you. I feel horrible that we make kids pay that money.
I think when I think of the amount of conversations I've had with VTV and the Triton Voice, hands down, parking wins for the number of discussions.
Dina?
Brian, can you remind me again when we will have the Maya Trust for the health insurance, when they have a better, right now we're
the
estimating
rates?
10%, the
Yeah, so
rates.
the annual meeting, I believe, is next weekend. This is the holiday weekend, right? So the annual meeting is next weekend. They set the range, which is literally the lowest to the highest, and then they'll tell you the average. I can tell you that our claims right now are very high. We're running at a 100% loss ratio, which means every dollar we're paying in premiums, they're paying out in claims. Some very high cost claims. So if they come in and say the range is 0 to 12 and the average is 8.9, we can be very confident we will be somewhere between the 8.9 and the 12.
Will be north of
Yeah.
that, yeah. Thank you.
And just to clarify, we do have a consultant working with Gallagher, and so they're monitoring that and giving us the intel that we need as best they can.
Other questions? Paul?
So Brian, our SRO spends how much time here a week?
Full-time,
Every day?
every day,
All day?
all day.
Wouldn't Mr. Brennan's duties of being the so-called parking police, if that was shifted to our SRO, wouldn't that be a great opportunity for him to get up front and personal with a lot of our young drivers?
Absolutely would be a great opportunity, but the duties do not allow him the jurisdiction to do that.
How?
So this is not, so this isn't, us monitoring our parking is not a police issue. So there's a very clear line about what and how police can get involved, whether it's the SRO or outside police. So, looking at Patrick and dealing with discipline, or Al as well on this campus, when they're dealing with discipline, is a very clear line about when the police, the SRO can be involved and can't. Same thing. So if there was, if there were signs and no idling and the car was idling, they can enforce that. But we charge a fee. It's not a civil violation. I've tried to get deputized. They won't do it. It would be a great opportunity. And that's not to say that the SRO doesn't have discussions, but it's not a formal role.
You sure we can't cut him in on a percentage? 50% going back to the town of Newbury to help facilitate the cost? I mean, it's a
Well, we pay, again, embedded in the district cost is $15,000 for the SRO. So we pay for, it's roughly half, and Newbury's eating the rest of the cost to have him here full-time.
All right. And so, Brian, this full-day K, if this gets implemented by choice as opposed to state mandate, are our transportation costs going to go up, go down?
Down.
Down.
So we wouldn't have midday transportation.
Right, because right now, we transport the kids at lunchtime.
Yeah, and it's fewer and fewer. But if there are 4 families that want half-day K and they're leaving at half-day, we have to provide the midday transportation. Parents could pick and drop off, as they, half of the parents do anyway, but we have to provide transportation at beginning and end of day. So if we were to move to full-day K and say we offer universal full-day K, we could say, okay, we offer half-day for those who want to leave, but we're not providing midday transportation. So that's an option as well.
Okay. And so on this full-day K, do you think that we're losing students to other surrounding communities that have full-day K because they never get into our system?
I have to look at that choice roster. I don't think there's a substantial number of kids going out at kindergarten. We're still choicing kids in at kindergarten. That's where we're trying to focus. There's parents are choosing Triton because it's Triton at kindergarten versus later on, if it's not a natural transition, when there's generally stories behind those transitions when someone's coming in their junior year or what have you. But I would have to look at the data, but I don't believe we're losing a significant number because of full day K. There's probably some. I'm sure the River Valley Charter offers free, so there's certainly a group of people, but it's Montessori. If that were a standard charter school versus a Montessori charter school, I would say the impact would probably be very different, just because the Montessori model is not for every child.
But going to full K, don't you think it would help our choice numbers?
Absolutely. I think it would absolutely help. Yes. Yep.
Thanks.
I just say too, there's a group called, I think it's called Strategies for Kids, that actually catalogs this every year and maps it. And we are, quite luckily for us, in the midst of an oasis right now in the North Shore up here. So most of the districts around us still charge for full-day kindergarten, and most of those charges are more than what we are. There are a lot of districts, though, that I have anecdotally heard of that are either starting to cut their fees this year, not necessarily in this area, although I think Danvers and Saugus and maybe North Andover are on that list. So not real close, it's not someplace we're going to lose choice kids to necessarily, but they're either doing it all at once, some of them are doing it all at once, and some of them are phasing it in. So I know Neshoba Regional is starting to phase, I think they're on a 3-year phase. Wachusett is doing it all this year. So I think there's, as of this year, I think there were 19 districts and 30-odd communities that were doing full-day K, because some of them are regional school districts, so, it's like what you said, 5 communities, 1 regional school district, so that's why those numbers don't match. So those numbers they're already small, and they're going to go down.
I don't know if this is true, but I heard a week ago that Pentucket is moving to full day. Do you know, anybody?
I have not heard that.
Yeah, I just know a secretary at one of their schools, and
Say that again?
I know a secretary at one of their elementary schools.
right.
Yeah, and she made a comment about having to register kids, because how busy it is, because they're moving to full-day kindergarten.
Free.
I believe so.
They're going straight to free?
I think
Amesbury
so.
is free as of this year, right? So
And that's a
Amesbury-
district right across the river, so very close.
It's happening. It's going to happen. There's
Yep,
no question
absolutely.
about it. There's no question. It's going to happen.
Yeah, Dina?
I have a concern and a question about the substitute line.
Yep.
Do we know to this point in this year how close we are to the 275 that we budgeted for this year?
We're just looking at this. I want to say there's about 163,000 unencumbered,
Okay,
unspent.
thanks.
So that would be through, kind of last week. So
Okay.
we're not to 100's day yet, right? We're
It
February.
isn't the busiest time for substitutes at the end of the
So
year.
we're halfway through
Yeah.
the year.
Right.
We've got more than half left, but we will.
That's the concern, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maureen?
I have a question about the phase reduction of the athletic fees. Isn't the athletic director's salary come from a portion of the athletic fees?
Gate receipts.
Oh, it's gate receipts, sorry. Yep, okay. Sorry.
You remembered everything from all 3 nights? My gosh, Maureen.
Any other questions? I think we've knocked out most of mine, but the one I had remaining was on page 18, the high school bleachers repair and maintenance. Is that what was in the high school presentation last night? And if so, this is the second part of that question, that presentation noted high school and middle school. This one only notes high school. So I was curious if it's only doing half the job.
I don't know the answer to that. I will. So again, there's been a couple times, I know that over the night, there's been some math errors. So again, we're doing this sans Michelle. We have Dave Jack in the office in the position who is trying to learn as quickly as he can, literally during budget season. So there are definitely some figures in here. But I do not, my guess is it would be it would be a duplicate, similar to the way transportation was being decided as these were being printed, and then ended up full in the athletics office and a portion in special ed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none. We'll sign off shortly. I know that I think, just anecdotally, that we've been having more viewers this year than we have in the past, and of course, from the district side, we'll be pushing out, all these documents and making sure people are aware of where they're stored online, all that type of thing. And there is always feedback welcome to the committee. If you go to the school committee members page, you can get to individual emails, and there's also a mass email that will send to all of us. If you do happen to send it to all of us, only I will reply as the chair due to open meeting law, but rest assured, all of the committee members will see it. We also have a public comment at the beginning of all of our meetings. That can be used by the public to comment on anything that we've been reviewing here as part of this process or ongoing through the budget, and there will be a public hearing later in the budget process as we get past the tentative budget and have some much more defined numbers to be able to work from. Barring that, our next meeting is on the 25th for the budget workshop. And that morning, we're also going to put on the agenda to talk very quickly about the incurring debt section of the regional agreement, so that we can have that conversation before the 29th. And can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make that motion.
You are in the seat.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, thank you all.
Thank you.